fellow warriors. This is Dao Paleo, and I'm Rokas Balčiūnas, and we haven't been seeing each other for a while, but as promised, I give you the second part of the video about defense against spear techniques. And this video will be focusing not only about the techniques of defense, though already started something in the previous video talking about the tactics, because you cannot separate tactics from defense techniques when, well, engaging in fight with the spears. So, additionally, what I wanted to mention to what I mentioned in the previous video, so for those who haven't seen that video, I encourage actually to find it. I'll try to put it somewhere here. And you'll be able to see this because it is a continuation of what we discussed. So we discussed that the distance is very important. Then, of course, very important is to always be pointing the spear to the opponent because it's a very sharp end and keeping them at bay. And also very important to maintain the correct distance that they would not be able to reach you, but you would be able to reach them. And of course, the parry, directions, and so on. Now, in today's video, I want to talk about several things. And first, we have to find out the purpose of the thrust. What is the goal or end goal of the thrust? And if you actually look into the general idea, this is a pointy stick. Either it is fire hardened and plain wood, or it has a stone or antler tip, or in later ages it had metal tip. So the idea is to thrust this into a body. So it makes a very deep wound. So therefore, the whole purpose of thrusting with a spear is to kill. So it could also severely injure, but the main purpose is to incapacitate to the largest extent possible. So therefore, actual training with the thrusts, or even if the tool or the weapon is blunt, is very dangerous. Because if you have a heavy weapon, if you concentrate the force, even with a stick, you can do a lot of damage, especially to softer tissues. So therefore, if you find some even martial arts or some training methodologies that they don't emphasize thrusts. So if you take, for example, tactip, so they don't have thrust, though they would definitely be very effective because they are very, very dangerous. And additionally, well, you don't always either want or can kill the opponent with one blow. So therefore, there are other techniques, as I call strikes, and the purpose of the strike is, well, multifold. So main purpose is not to kill. Well, you cannot basically kill with one strike unless the other person is not defending in any other way, waiting for the blow to reach the head, and the blow has a very large way to generate power. So maybe that would be the lethal one strike. But generally, the purpose of the strike is not this. The purpose of the strike is, first of all, to injure the hand. So you see that you have the hand which is in front, and if my hand would be injured, I will not be able to wield the weapon to the full extent, and therefore, next or the other attacks would not be, I will not defend against this attack so well, so I might get impaled. So attacking the front hand or front leg is one of the goals of the strike. So striking to the hand or striking to the leg, these are the goals of the strike. Now, second goal of the strike is actually to attack the head. So if I am able to attack the head, the strike, even if it's not lethal, it can induce disorientation, at least for a short while, which might be enough for me to strike and then thrust. So that is the second goal of the thrust. Now, the third goal of the thrust is to open up the person. So if they have spear in front of them, as we talked in the previous video, so in order for me to have a strike, either I move around it, by opening myself, or I strike the spear to the side and moves directly to the opponent and thrust. So I use strike to just create an opening in an opponent. And fourth goal of the strike is to feint. So if I move with the strike and the person parries, they open up. So I feint and thrust, or I'll feint and thrust. I feint low, thrust high, and so on. So the strikes are a very good way of feinting. So well, unless the person is made of stone, they still fear the strike even if it's not lethal, especially for the joints, because, well, it incapacitates for the further fight. So these differences in goals give a bit different tactics for defending. So when we're talking about thrust, we said that they're very dangerous, but at the same time, they're easy to parry because we have perpendicular forces. Now, the strike is not so easy to parry. It is possible to parry a strike, so incoming strike and just pushing it away, but it still usually just changes the target. Instead of head, you get the leg and so on. So for the thrusts and the strikes, we have a bit different tactics. So first of all, recapping what we talked about the thrusts, the question is, do you bind with the opponent's spear when you parry, or do you push it away? And my suggestion is that you bind. Why? Because if you push it away, you just set the opponent to the attack, especially with the strike. So it pushes away, so they can strike. They can use that against yourself. But I would argue that even more importantly is the feeling. If you bind, the person who thrusts actually does not feel with his body. Of course, they can see, but they don't feel with their body that the strike did not reach the target. There is no bump. It's just something in the air. So therefore, they cannot feel it. So there is a lack of reaction at that point. They have to process the information from the eyes that the thrust did not reach the target to make another move. So therefore, when you bind, you win these several seconds because you know what you're doing, but they don't. And therefore, you can counter-strike. Now, when talking about the strikes, either to the head from one side or the other, or to the hand, or to the leg, the question is, when you block, what to do? Either you block the way that it skips off one direction or another, or you block the way to stop it. And I would suggest that the best way is actually to stop it. And bear with me, why? If you stop the strike, you end up somewhere. For example, I had a strike and it stopped. So now the only thing that I can do is either move to another strike, so I have to move around, so I have to engage my whole body, or I have to go around it, so go back, and then thrust. In any way, I have to do two movements. When I stop the opponent's spear, the opponent has to do two movements in order to proceed. When I just let it skip through, it actually doesn't stop. So if I have a strike, it skips through, so it can go directly to another strike. Or if it skips through, it can go directly to the lower strike. Or if it skips through, it can thrust and so on. So therefore, when I stop it, I am prepared to do one movement to counter-strike, and the opponent has to do two movements. So therefore, it is also winning a bit of time, which is very crucial. So in both situations, when you parry a thrust or when you block a strike, your idea is to make a connection with the opponent's weapon. Now, there are different techniques depending where the opponent is aiming to strike. So first distance is that the opponent might be aiming to strike the spear to create an opening, like that. So if the opponent strikes the spear, he or she wants to create an opening and therefore thrust directly to me. So in order to be faster, to stop it in his tracks, I have to blend with it. So if they strike the spear, I just come back. If they strike the spear, I come back. If they strike the spear, I come back. So I blend with it. So if they strike, I'm not just pushing back and forth, but I just blend with the circular movements. So if they strike to the left, I blend and regain control of the center part. I don't have to move actually myself because the whole force goes to the spear, the end of the spear. So it just sets the spear in motion, one side or the other side, and that's it. So that's the first distance. Of course, closer is my hand or my leg. So what to do if the target of the opponent's strike is your hand or leg? So first of all, if they're already targeting your hand or leg, you are not keeping the correct distance because either you keep your hand stretched out or you are too close. So you have to always maintain the idea that they might target your hand. That is very common target. So therefore, you have to be moving and maintaining just the distance that they will not be able, or you would be able to move the hand back or move the leg like this, or move the whole body, and that would be enough for them not to reach your hand. Of course, I'm not talking about flails or something that the weapon that has a deceptive distance. So it looks short, but maybe becomes longer and so on. That's not the question. The weapon question is now the spear. Now, distance is very important, and of course, you could stop the strike to a hand in tracks by just parrying, so counter-striking. So if you see the strike coming, just poof, push it away, and that could be also a way to stop, but of course, you push away and regain control of the center line. Now, what to do if you are quite close and they're able to strike to the head or generally to the center line, so to the torso of your body? What to do then? So at that point, the same as we learned in the defense against the thrust, we use the 4 directions of parries. If we have strike to the head, I have the block here, the same as we did with the strike, but just if you look from the side, sort of from here, so the block, if I had the strike, it's somewhere in front of me. If I have a block, it's besides me in that sense. So I have still the A shape, but it is more to the side. So I want to stop that strike here. So if it's the strike to that angle, I make a block here. If it's strike here, I have 2 options. I make here the block, so sharply twisting on my axis, could be block here, or if it's enough, I could have a block here. If you have enough time to move, you could block with the center part here. So, of course, block here, A, and block here with the other end. It is possible to use the same block with the middle from this direction, but you have to move your body a bit here. So, also works here and here. And from this side, here and here. Now, what happens if you have the strike to the lower part, so either to the abdomen or to the leg or even the back leg? How to block that? So you could just lower the hands and stop it here, as we did with the strike here. It's a lot more complicated to block here because you cannot move your hand close enough here. So you could intercept it like there, but you cannot have it a block. But you can have the opposite direction here. As I had the block with the middle part here, you can have a block with the lower part here as well. And the same applies to another direction. You could block like this here, or you could have a block like that. So you could have a block where your hands are facing away of you, the same as we did here, or you could have a block more of hands like in the strike. So it's a very similar position, maybe more visible from the side. So I have a block here in front of me, or I have a block here more facing forward. Now, the most difficult part to defend is the middle, because, well, is it upper techniques or lower techniques? So therefore, you should always think of if something is approaching you in the middle, so you decide whether you duck a bit and use techniques from the upper defense, for example, here, or here, or here, or here, or you actually use the techniques that from above, as if you just stretch a bit. So, for example, if they're approaching in the middle, you just use the technique above you to block here. Instead of using technique here, you use the technique here. The same goes to that direction. If you have strike from this direction, you could use the technique here with this end instead of that. So you just turn and protect from this end. So very important part is to protect your front hand. So to protect your front hand, if you place it like this, the fingers are exposed. So I'll show it here. The fingers are exposed. So therefore, if you are not careful, placing just, no, if you just place the stick in front of you and hope for the best, then chances are that you would get, well, broken fingers. So therefore, there are two ways. Either you are actively engaged and deciding which part of your spear blocks what. So if you're blocking with this part, you are blocking with this part. You mentally think about this part blocking. Or if you decided to block with this end, you are mentally thinking how this end blocks. Or you can release the fingers a bit, so just hide the fingers behind the spear for a short while. So instead of having a full grip, you can have this one. So these are very important tactics and together the techniques of defending against the strikes. And the last thing to mention is that when you are using the strikes, either to open up the person or to induce disorientation by striking the head, or opening up, or actually fainting, you are also opening up. As we discussed, the spear should always point directly to the opponent. So if you are planning for the strike, you are still opening up. So it's very important not to have very wide strikes, but as we did, short ones here, 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 and so on. So not very wide ones. We start wide, but we think about very short ones, short movements, which are in front of you and always pointing to the opponent. So, hope you find this interesting. Well, till the next time. See you.